Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the co-founder and CEO of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Carole Railton. Carole is the UK's #1 business body language specialist. And we're going to talk today about body language in the new world of working remotely, and the fact that we now haven't got any face-to-face meetings, and we have to do everything through Zoom or Ring Central or with these products. So Carole, welcome.
Thank you.
Where before we start, where can people find you?
LinkedIn, the name's on the screen. If you put frsa after it, there is another Carole Railton, but she doesn't have a picture there. Right. So Carole Railton at frsa at LinkedIn is probably
okay. And that's because some people who watch this, English maybe not their first language. It's Carole with an E, so Carole, and Railton is rail, RAIL, and ton as in Tehran. Before we go any further, because I promised to do this, I think you have a book.
I do.
Okay, so let's see your book then, Carole.
It's called The Future of Body Language, and it shows you how to perform on different sets of multimedia.
Right.
Perhaps at the end, I can offer your.
Well, you know, I understand that they need to get it from you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So they can't buy this on Amazon. It's so exclusive. It's not available on Amazon. And in the UK, if they're from the UK, if they buy the book, you'll do it free postage and packing.
Absolutely right. Until the end of August this year.
Okay.
So yes.
This year being 2020.
I suppose we should say that. Yes.
Yeah. Fantastic. Great to have you on, Carole. And we're going to talk about a number of things around body language. And let's assume that we know nothing about it. You know, I've read some books on body language, but it's something that I think is evolving and changing. One of the things that you talked about when we did the prep for this was the fact that there are different behaviors for the different sexes and generations. So tell us about that.
Okay, let's start with the generations. Baby boomers, which clearly I'm one of, which is 46 to 64. We are very good at face-to-face communications because that's how we were brought up. And in today's environment, we're getting used to video because we like to see people face-to-face. Generation X, they're really good at writing. Perhaps they used to text in their pockets, and they're not so used to face-to-face or video. They're used to the telephone, and really Alexander Graham Bell's got a lot to answer for, because when the telephone came in, we dropped body language. So there's been quite a while that we haven't had the use of reading body language or utilizing our own body language to influence people. Generation Y are those kids, that I call them, because I'm in the baby boomers era, that have the cap on the back of their head, and the handheld is always with them. They're very good at making podcasts. They're very good at making videos. They get all of their information from their handheld, where they're going to work, what they're going to do, what they're going to read. It all comes off the systems. And I think you can see that there would be different behaviors, therefore, on video with all of those three.
So I'm of the age where, you know, the camera was something special. It was in a cupboard, and it would be a big thing to take it out the cupboard and take a photo. Whereas now, you know, you can go you and take photos as many as you like, because it's pretty much free. You don't have to get it developed or anything. What is it that in this world now, where we're working in and we're all working remotely? You know, I've just come off a Zoom call, and you know, we tend to now be spending all of our time doing those sort of things. What is it that we can be doing that we can doing better so that we get that first impression?
Okay, I think you're talking about preparation there.
Yes.
And one of the key things in life is breath. I mean, without breath, you're dead. It's a signal you're alive. So you need to understand how you're breathing. And those of us who had sales backgrounds will know that we need to connect with the client's breath. We get in sync with the breath. They begin to like us and they don't know why. And we can take more chances and we can influence more. So the breath is very important. And if you're nervous, I suggest you do a few deep breaths before you go on screen. Something else that you probably haven't thought about, and it's something that a lot of actors do, and I'm going to use my hands, even though I'm going to say don't do that as a general rule, is to imagine that you have a very heavy crown on your head, really heavy jeweled crown. It's much easier and more influential, I guess, if you're standing up. But whoever's watching this now, perhaps you could try it. Just imagine you have a crown on your head. You have to keep it on your head, and it takes your shoulders back. And
my shoulders immediately went back.
Brilliant, it works. That's why I'm here. Yeah. So that's one of the things that you can do. If you've, and it's slightly different to going on stage, because if you're going on stage, you might want to do that, but you would add a cloak. If you were going on stage, you would walk more precisely, and you would imagine you had this crown on your head and a very heavy woolen cloak over your shoulders. And these two things together give you the confidence to go on stage. Right. So if you don't get the crown first time, what I'm suggesting is you do the cloak as well. Okay. But it's not necessary for most people.
And it's about making sure that you're keeping the breath, and take some deep breaths before you go on, but making sure that you're breathing when you're having the conversation as well.
Yes, you need to be breathing if you can see the breath. It's very difficult to see the breath in anyone who's wearing black, incidentally. Then I would try and work in that sequence there where their pauses are, try and create that pattern. So your breath and your body movement, although small, would be the same as your client or your member of staff. And that creates a closer contact between you.
And I've heard this as being called things like mirroring, where you're mirroring what the other person is. Is that a similar sort of thing, or is I've been in meetings where people go like this, and then there's then everybody's doing that,
Well, I think that's a mistake, because clearly most people know what you're doing nowadays. And it's not about that. It is about the breath. It's about mirroring the breath. As you say, if someone's got a nervous twitch like this, you can't sit there and do that. There are things you can do actually to mimic it, but you're not going to do it so boldly. So it is more about mimicking the breath. And that's why you start by imagining the crown on your head, because that opens out your lungs so that you can breathe properly. As you said, your shoulders immediately went back. Yeah. Your lung capacity is much greater.
Right. Okay.
So it's very, very important part of body language.
And so in terms of the body language, talking one-to-one and talking on a conference, there's a difference, isn't there?
Absolutely. Something that might surprise you is that the feet are actually the most honest part of your body. Let me explain that. So I do work for a stockbroker, and their stockbrokers go and watch the CEOs of big companies deliver the forecasts for next year and the budgets, great big companies. And they then advise their clients what to invest in. I analyze those CEOs for those stockbrokers.
Oh, wow.
So it's a fantastic thing to be doing, actually. And so if I can't see the feet I don't know that they're telling the truth, and I do mean that. But I can't say they're lying. That would I'd be in trouble with the lawyers. But I can write it in such a way that it indicates that I'm not convinced. And I look at the feet. If you think about the feet now, if you point your feet to the left, I mean, quite exaggerate that, you have to go to the left.
Yes.
You can't go to the right. You would fall over. So the feet are always telling the truth. And I mean, obviously, it's much more detailed information, and that's part of body language. But in general terms, that's what you would seal it with, that what you've now said about this person's body language is correct. Okay. Right. So I'm
moving my feet around now because I don't
okay, so in simple terms, if you're in a video conference, you're more likely to see more of the person because there'll be a table, perhaps with lots of people around it. If you can see their feet, you can know what's going on.
Right.
A very simple tip, and you do need to look at the other things going on, is if the person's feet are pointing towards the door, they're likely to be wanting to get out of that meeting.
Right.
So you can take account of that if you're the team leader. You need to sort of notice those things. Obviously, you'd be noticing what they're doing with their hands, who they're looking at, whether it's scratching their head or their neck, all indicators of things that are going on. And I think most people think that if you put your head on the side, this indicates that you're listening.
Yes.
People know this one. You know,
yeah, I know.
Team meeting, they just put their head on the side. And I think
fall asleep, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of the old stuff, as you said, there's a difference between new and the old, has gone away. One of the reasons, as I got noticed, was because I first wrote about breath as an indicator.
Yes.
It had never been done before. And then most books, up until about 10 years ago, didn't distinguish between men and women. And there's quite a massive difference between the body language of a man and of a woman.
Yes.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, please. Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the most obvious things is that women make more moves than men. By that, I mean, if we're asked to walk across the room, we would actually look in more directions. We'd move our arms more than a man would. And I've tested this over a 10-year period, and it's always been validated. And so when men see women and they're trying to treat them as equal, it's actually quite difficult for both sides because the men aren't making as many moves as the women. And because if you're in a position of authority in general, you'll make less moves. It's two indicators of authority, and movement is one. The men and women can't quite see each other as equals. And it's really important that we understand this, that women are just operating a different way. And another signal that women misunderstand frequently, especially in the boardroom, is when a guy is listening, he may nod slightly. The woman will take that as an indicator that they're agreeing with what they're saying.
Yeah.
And more than likely, they're listening,
yes,
and digesting it. Whereas the woman wouldn't do that. She would only nod when she agrees.
Right.
These are fundamental things that make such a difference to decisions and impressions.
And I guess that in this world of working remotely, there is likely to be even more, Zoom call, all you can see is your face and you see these little pictures of everybody else. If everybody's basically sitting there nodding, you're thinking, oh, great, it's a great meeting because everybody's agreeing with me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there's, it's so much harder actually because you've got all these people looking at you, so you're very much there up on stage. But also it's so much more difficult to actually find out whether you're getting agreement or disagreement, because extroverts will come forward. There's always one person that wants to talk and basically control the conversation, and there's other people that want to fade into the background. And actually knowing who to pull out and who to gradually shut up, is difficult.
It is, and it's interesting you mentioned extroverts and introverts there, because the hardest person to be able to do a one-to-one video like we're doing now is going to be the hardest for a female who's extrovert. I just happen to be in that category.
I was going to say, well, that's you.
It's me. So that it's not easy for me to sit in one place. I'm used to the stage training, that sort of thing. It's really difficult, and that's why I wrote the book, because I had to examine it. Because up until 11, 12 years ago, I was ahead of everybody else. But then I realized I wasn't able to just translate all of that onto videos and direct focus with someone. In normal life, i.e. not on a video, we don't just see the face. We see in our peripheral vision the room, other people maybe that are in the meeting. And we don't look at the person for 100% of the time. I'm sure that when you were trained or had it explained, it was 80% of the time that we were told to look at people. And also because the body has different sides. I mean, we shake hands with our right hand. So we give out with the right hand. That's giving. And we receive with the left. And for me, I've been training and lecturing on this for years. Look into your client or your manager's left eye, because that's the receiving side of the body. This is my left, by the way, just so you know, because I'm talking about mirroring. So that I've been training for years. Now it doesn't apply, because I think 80% of the time we should be looking at the camera, all right? And then flicking back to make sure that we look okay and the person we're talking to is okay. So it has changed dramatically. So it's far easier now for introverts to come forward. It's easier actually for men to use video because they're making less movements. They're more stable sitting down and looking at a screen. So that's where we're up to right now.
So what advice have you got for people that are, you've been in sales, you work for Xerox. If we're in sales, we can't have any face-to-face meetings. We're going onto these calls, and we may not be selling something because it may be there's a form of discovery, or we're trying to get to the next stage. What advice have you got for people about what they can be doing to help them in terms of their body language, to help them sell, really?
Okay. I think the first thing is it is slightly different because we can get more information about the person now. And if you can watch that person on a video clip, you're sort of ahead, because you can keep scrolling backwards and forwards until you understand their verbals and their pauses, which is actually their breath pattern, which you want to follow. So you can be prepared for that. You've already looked up, presumably on LinkedIn, as well as their company profile. So you'll have an idea if this person is ambitious, whether they've got lots of hobbies, whether you haven't, and if so, what is the entry point then? Do you have something in common with them? So I think those sort of introductory statements are still valid. What you have to realize, and they will be in the same position as well, is it's not 30 seconds now that you have to make up your mind. It's 2 seconds that people make up their mind about you. And the first thought is, I put my glasses on purposely. I'm going to take them off now. So if I take them off and you had thought that I was not okay when you first saw me in the first 2 seconds, that action of taking my glasses off will validate your thought. Look, she didn't even get prepared. She forgot to take her glasses off. Now, if you like me, it's exactly the same vision you had, but you might think something like, oh, she's human. Yeah, she took her glasses off and moved along. So first 2 seconds, we make up our mind. Our thoughts then validate what's going on and why we like that person or why we don't. And it's vital that you have an objective when you sit down, just like you would when you went to a face-to-face meeting. You need to know what the objective is and to set that out at the very beginning. But here you've got an allocated time. You know, you're only on Zoom for however long, 20 minutes, half an hour. You're probably going to pack in more into that time than you would when you were face-to-face, because it's easier to be distracted. Your peripheral vision will take other things in. You'll notice what pen they use or something like that, make a comment about that. All of that falls away, and you have to be much more focused and much more aware of what's going on for them as well as for yourself.
Yeah, I get rid of all the distractions that are around me. And I actually switch things off. Otherwise, I'll get people slacking me and sending emails, and you know what it's like in this environment. People expect an instant answer, and you just can't give that.
Sorry, I was just going to say, we didn't touch on this, but I hope it's not too basic for your listeners. And that is, when you set up the video, you need to find a quiet space. And we're talking now during the virus lockdown time. And so people have got children at home and maybe not as much space as I've got or you've got. And they need to announce that fairly early on, because it's not an office environment if that's the case.
I was on the call yesterday and the person said he's on baby duty, and then immediately basically put the baby on his knee. And we had, and it's like, well, I've known Tim for years, so yeah, and I think you need to, I shut the door. Normally when I have the office, the door's open, but the door's shut means I'm recording. And I think you need to go onto the calls and say, I'm at home and I'm looking after the two. And, it's a bit like, I was on one of these and my partner's laptop went down and she was downstairs, and I'm talking and the door opens and she crawls along the floor, gets her power cable and then goes out again. And we just carried on, and I'm thinking, but you do need to announce it. I mean, is there anything else we can do around concentration and making sure that, because you sit on a Zoom calls all day and you're so much more tired.
Well, it's the focus. You're focusing much more than you would in a face-to-face meeting. I think the other thing to remember is your arms. I mean, they're 2.5 times the size of your face. So you want to keep your hands out of view. And for someone like myself, that's really difficult. So I'm just holding a copy of my book under the screen, and any movements I'm prevented from doing. But it's worth mentioning that extroverts use their body much more when they're influencing, even if they're not aware of it.
Right.
One of the reasons they're called extroverts, because they lean forward, they open their arms. It's a lot about body language. And so they are losing a lot of the skills. So I think, if possible, if you are an extrovert, keep the calls much shorter, because you will be more frustrated than the average person. And you set the time, say I'm here for 20 minutes. Have you got 20 minutes? You set that up, and then we can follow up next week on Monday at 10 o'clock. So you need to split it up, which will give you time anyway to sort things out.
I always plan the call in terms of saying, how long have we got at the start, and agreeing an agenda, and then 10 minutes before the end, it's about bringing the call to an end and then summarizing. and taking actions, because otherwise a lot of people will talk to the point where it's the end of the call, and then they'll go, what are the actions? And then we'll go, well, I'm going, sorry.
No, it's true. I do think you need to set out the time beforehand.
Yeah.
And your focus, as I said right at the beginning, is on the camera, which is above your face.
Yeah.
So you can't, unless you've got really strong peripheral vision, you can't always see your client. So I think I also said that you need to take 20 minutes or 20% of the time, interacting with your face and the face of the person you're talking to. Because you'll get more of an idea of what's going on. You know, if they're scratching their head, it's like, you know, I'm not really sure about what's going on. Yeah, and you need to notice these things.
Right. And are those things still in place around touching your nose is lying and scratching your ear and all that? Or is that like, you know, from what's it? Desmond wrote a book, didn't he? Man watching years ago.
Well, a lot of things are still true, but they've been compromised. You know, a child, when they tell a lie, sometimes goes like this after they've told the lie. And what's going on with grown-ups is they might, I'll have to raise my hand slightly, they might just move their hand up. You know, they won't scratch their nose because everyone knows that's what it's supposed to be. But there will be movements. They might be quite subtle. And again, you might, because they're so quick now, you might not notice them because you're looking at the camera. So if you have got the time, it's worth looking back at the video to see what was going on. You will notice things that you didn't notice during the call. Yeah. But if it's a first time call with someone, up to 75% of the communication is visual.
Right.
That's an enormous amount of communication going on, 75%. So you might have planned all your questions, know your product or your service, but you need to also understand that they're making decisions about what you look like, where you are, what you're wearing, as well as what you're saying. You know, we make up our minds when we see someone, not when we hear them. Yeah, we see someone across the room and we decide we like them or we don't. You've never spoken to them.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's true. I find this subject fascinating, and you know, it's always been of interest to me. Anyway, we're at 27 minutes, so we need to conclude. Sorry, it always goes so fast, but remind everybody where they can get your book and stuff, Carole.
Okay, on LinkedIn, I think is the easiest because we mentioned it before. So it's my name as on the screen, Carole with an E, Railton.
Yeah.
FRSA at the end. If you just drop me a message, I'll immediately.
And your book?
My book, The Future of Body Language. Let's do it the same way. Let's do it through LinkedIn rather than make it complicated. Yeah. I'm based in central London, so you can find me on Twitter as well, of course, and all the usual places. But I think LinkedIn's the easiest one to go. Yeah.
And you're an amazing speaker, and you look at the feet of CEOs and.
Yeah, indeed. What a weird occupation.
It is, but it's I don't know. It's just so fascinating. I mean, I when I do this, I always learn at least one thing, and that's just something I've learned today is that you need to see some people's feet.
You do. If you don't trust them, you definitely need to see their feet.
Amazing. Carole, thank you so much today. It's been fantastic. Thank you. And I'm sure we'll talk sometime soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Carole. Bye.